Well, Arundhati Bhattacharya recently moved to a new position as the head of the State Bank as the head of Salesforce, and my colleague Ajay Sharma had a conversation with the former SBI chairman, and listen in to a chunk of that exclusive conversation.
I think, this time around, the fears will always be there because uncertainty nobody likes. But, if you look at the banking space, much of the problems in the banking space had already been cleaned up, okay, when we hit the pandemic, in the sense that, the weak accounts had already been identified. There was a lot of provisions, even in a bank like SBI, the provisions have gone up to 83%. If you take away the assets under collection, it's still in excess of, I think, 63%. So, the provisions for the older NPAs are all very much there. And if you look at the newer ones, I feel, it'll be the weaker accounts that will fall, the smaller accounts that will fall. And there, I think, the government has come in with a lot of support to try and ensure that these companies don't have to go under, to try and ensure that they can continue to do their business for a year or so till they get back up on their feet. So I don't think, that the impact will be as great probably as it was between the years of 2013 and 15. It will be a one-time impact as things come back on, but it will be an impact on weaker and smaller accounts, not so much as large corporates falling. I think the Reserve Bank will also do a little bit of hand-holding. They are already showing the inclination for that, to do that hand-holding. But I think it's also prudent on the part of the bankers to raise capital. See, at the end of the day, raising capital is something any prudent person would do. You, as a prudent householder, haven't you withdrawn cash and kept it at home? Everybody has done that, because you don't know tomorrow there might be a quarantine on the bank for some reason, the branch that you are going to, the ATM may not work, you may need cash suddenly. So everybody has now got a little bit of cash at home, okay, to take care of emergencies. It's the same with banks. They are raising money in case of anything that they have not been able to anything they have been able to envisage, anything they have not been really able to factor in. So what if, instead of the curve turning in July and August like everybody is expecting, what if it goes on till November? There might be a bigger impact. And so they're getting their capital up, which I think is absolutely prudent and the right thing to do. But having said that, again, I will repeat that India is a country where, the demand really rolls up from the bottom. This time, thankfully, the bottom is less impacted than the cities, okay? So the demand will kick in. The demand is now currently kept in abeyance because everybody is at home. They are right down to basics. Nobody really needs so many things. And actually speaking, it's quite a revelation what all we can do without, these 2 months at home. We have realized how little we really need in order to survive. But it's not as though the demand has gone away forever. The demand will come back in, it will again hit. And as businesses come up, I think that cycle will stop.
Right. That's quite comforting to know from you, from your observation, that you do not really expect corporate NPA cycle to go out of whack, and you actually expect things to start turning around. But when we speak to your friends from the lending community, say Ramesh Iyer from M&M Financial, Sundaram Finance, they are actually saying exactly what you're saying, that the rural end and tier 2, tier 3 demand is buoyant, repayments are happening in time, collections are good. But at the same time, commentary coming in for retail-centric urban lenders, say Kotak, for example, say Bajaj Finance, for example, does create nervousness in the mind of observers that probably is it this time could the urban retail borrower be in trouble? What are your thoughts on this side?
See, again, let me tell you that I think, this is the place where, being data-centric and being digital helps a lot. Okay? So we really need to go with data and digital. And then you will get a much better idea about what the impact is like. Today, it is very difficult to understand the impact, mainly because there is an EMI waiver or abeyance, kept in abeyance, that's been allowed by the RBI for 6 months. Okay, so unless and until those repayments start kicking in, you won't really know where you are. However, if you are far more data centric, then you will be able to understand what is the status of your particular client and be able to take care about it. So what you can do is, you can rephase these installments and stick it at the end. You can just ask for the interest also to be capitalized and given as an EMI at the end of the loan. There are very many ways of handling this. See, in the urban context, the problem is, you have to be paid salaries. If your businesses are closed, if there is a lock on the door, the salaries won't be forthcoming. And therefore, you need to be able to live on your savings, which people are doing at this point of time. But as businesses open up, you will see that many of these repayments will kick back in. Because at the end of the day, the loans that are there on the retail segment, many of them are for things like houses. And the last thing people want to lose is the roof over their heads. And these loans are not for investment in real estate. These loans are mainly for investment in actual living spaces, okay? In many cases, the first house that these people have. So, it is a little bit of an uncertain situation, which is why I think, to call what it will be like at this point is difficult. But I think, those players that have invested enough in technology to be able to understand what their borrowers are doing, how their borrowers will fare, that they do have a leading edge over this, that they will be able to control the situation as it unfolds. And yes, we need to get out to somewhere in October, November to really take a call as to what is the impact on economy. Till then, I think whoever says anything, it's still conjecture.
Sure.
It's not, you cannot say any of this with certainty.
Right. And you have analyzed the measure which global central banks have taken, governments have taken unprecedented measures so far, and also looked at what the Indian policymakers have taken. So what do you make of the measures taken so far? And there's one particular argument of the industry, the real estate / construction industry, as well as the lending, that there should be a one-time restructuring which should be allowed. And that actually be a big help for the industry. What do you make of that? Is there a case for that?
So probably there is a case for that because, in our system, what happens is that once an account becomes NPA, it gets into the don't touch category. Okay. So somehow in India, there is a tinge of criminality that comes into any account that becomes NPA, which is not correct. It's not correct at all. Yes, there could be some no good people where these problems might be there, but you cannot, paint the entire NPA segment with the same brush, because business is a function of risk. Okay, you take risk, and normally the higher risk you take, the higher return you get. Okay, that's simple, absolutely means that's a known principle. That if you take high risks, you get high returns. But with higher risk also comes the possibility that there will be a much bigger downside. Okay, so business in any case is a venture where you have to take risks. And a risk like the pandemic is not something that most people have factored in. And therefore, when such a risk event occurs, it's quite likely that there will be an impact. Now, if this is an impact that is across industry, across organizations, then it is, in the interest of the policymakers to ensure that there is some handholding. Because without that handholding, what is going to happen is precious resources of our own country, they will go waste, and that doesn't make sense at all. And therefore, some amount of handholding is required. Now, whether that handholding is in the form of a one-time restructuring, whether it is in the form of one-time waiver, it could be in so many forms. But I do think that some amount of handholding is required from the policymakers. And, I think they are open to it. It's just that, this may be too early to announce it. As I said, it's only when the curve starts sloping downwards that you will see more of these pronouncements going forward, because that will be the time when it will need to be action.
On that note, we take a very quick break. Back with more in just a moment.